Okay, we now have an introduction for the COVID virus that we have to read, so just give me a moment here. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the board will meet virtually. The public is invited to the Bernard Jumbeck Administrative Center to watch the virtual stream and participate in public comment. Public participation will be done via email submission. Laptop will be made available for anyone wishing to submit comments or questions. All comments and/or questions will be read out loud during the public participation. Roll call, Lori?
Mrs. Salzer.
Yes. Here.
Mrs. Egan.
Here.
Ms. Davenport.
Present.
Mr. Hillman.
Here.
Mrs. Callan.
She's here.
And I'm going to mark as yes. I do see that she's unmuted, or she's muted right now, but she's here.
Yes, here. Sorry about that.
Mrs. Lamel
Here.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Here.
Okay, stand for the pledge, please. I'm looking at a flag here. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of
of
the
the
United
States of America
and to
and
the republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we do have one guest.
We have two guests tonight.
Two guests.
We have Corey from Studio GC joining
Right.
once again, and we also have Tammy from
Oh,
Keep.
okay.
So thank you guys
Okay,
for being
Tammy's
with
here
us
too?
tonight.
Okay, I saw Corey. I didn't see Tammy. I don't see her.
She's up in the
Oh,
corner.
there she is. Hi, Tammy. Okay, we don't have, there's nobody here for the public, so
There is not. No.
there is not. Potential board action to approve accounts payable voucher, 1254, for the amount of $128,828.01. So are we voting now?
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion.
Make the motion. Oh, sorry.
I have Tiffany on the motion. I'm sorry. And who is on the second?
Here's that's fine.
Tirza, thank you. Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos. Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Lamel.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action to approve accounts payable voucher 1255 for the amount of $494,973.48. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mrs. Lamel.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Okay, Dr. Thorns, Superintendent.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Thanks again for joining us virtually. Once again, it seems like this has been going on forever, and it's a beautiful night. So I really appreciate you jumping on the computer with us. A couple things. Our first one that I wanted to talk about was our consolidated state grant application. This is fairly new. Last year, the board also had to approve it. And it's really per regulations from the Illinois State Board that we must complete this application before we're able to apply for any of our other grants. The real important Title I, obviously, being a huge part of that. So we do need to get this application approved. You'll see it in your board packet if you can see it at all. That is the way the state board printed it for us. I think it's like 4 font. It's the smallest thing ever. But really it just kind of gives an overview of what we've used this money for in the past. And a lot of the money that we would be using for when we come back to school, whether in person or remote, that would come from the CARES Act. But this is kind of for all of those grants overall. So you will be asked to approve that later. So, the next one, 5.2, is the task force update. It couldn't come, I guess, at a better time since we did receive some information from the state. Today was our third meeting, and our task force right now has 37 members on it. And we met the first time, kind of just an overview of all the different things that we would be looking at for next school year. And then last week, we really focused on scheduling and operations options that we have. And then today was more of a focus on academics. And you could tell kind of going through the meeting today, people were still excited and talking, but up to this point, in a way, kind of spinning some of our wheels just because we've been waiting to get guidance from the state and to determine exactly what we can do moving forward. And next week, we'll be meeting again on Tuesday, and this is when our two board members will be joining us. Both Chrissy and Tiffany have agreed to do that. And I'm very excited to have them join us with their backgrounds of obviously being parents, board members, and educators themselves. So I think it will be a combination to have on that committee. And we will also be having two parents from every school joining us as well. So we'll be up into the 40s, which sounds very large, but I've talked to some districts that have as many as 80 people on the task force. And I remember what I've talked about before is that we really don't spend a lot of time in the large group, but we really break up into smaller groups that have been about 7 to 8 people. And that's where a lot of this work has been done. I did send everyone probably around 3 o'clock, the 66 pages of guidance that we have here from the state of Illinois. And I'm also planning on sending a letter out along with the guidance to our families tonight, just really stating that the guidance was released to the public at the same exact time that it got released. And a lot of things in there aren't surprising, but there's still tons of things to go through. Everything from what would it look like to social distance in the classroom, to what our bus is going to be, what kind of mental health supports do we have to provide for teachers and families. So it really is a lot to dig into. But again, I wasn't really surprised by a whole lot of what was in there. I think the only thing that has surprised me so far is how they kind of were picking and choosing where to apply certain guidelines. So you're supposed to social distance in the classroom. And for a lot of our classrooms, that means we could get anywhere between 15 and 22 people in there at what they consider a safe distance. But yet they're saying on a school bus now that you can have 50 kids on the school bus. So to me, that is really kind of picking and choosing where to apply the appropriate social distance guideline. And the one thing that has been made very clear is that masks will be required in person for everyone over the age of 2, unless they have a medical note explaining why they cannot wear that. So that obviously is going to be extremely difficult to deal with if we go in person. I mean, when I think of some of our pre-K students and even some of our older kids to have that on, and some of our teachers, I know for me, the second I get into my office and don't have anyone around me, I'm taking that mask off right away. So it's going to be something that's very, very difficult. But again, I have a really good task force, and we're going to work on going through all of this stuff. I want to open it up to any questions that you might have, but I also would encourage that I'm sure you're going to get some phone calls and questions, and to really just let them know that we are working through this as quickly as we can, with hopefully not missing any steps that we need to take. So just wanted to see if anyone had any questions at this time.
I was just wondering if masks aren't going to be required. Is there going to be some kind of guidance to the kids of how to like maneuver them?
Yeah.
Not to grab them?
Yeah, one of the things
front.
that was in this document for both staff and students was to show them proper ways to use them and to put them on, take them off. And we are planning on, whenever we have students back, of having plenty of masks available for students. We hope that they will bring their cloth ones and that they would wash them from home. But we also know kids this is the first time today that I forgot my mask and had to use the disposable ones. But we know kids, that's going to happen all the time. So.
Adam, do you feel that they're going to be giving us more and more guidelines as it goes forward, or is this it? Or
So from a social distancing standpoint and being safe, I think this is all we're going to get. We were told that we are going to get more information as far as like in classroom learning, like looking at standards and giving assessments. That is the one part that I still believe we will get some more in a couple weeks. But I think for everything else, this is it.
Okay. The other question that I had, because you kind of alluded to it or said it, is that I haven't had many people ask me, but we're not in contact with anybody right now, really. Do we feel that we're going to have that many parents that are going to be like, nope, my kid's not going back? Do you think that that's going to be a big thing or not?
Yeah, I think based on emails that I have received over the last month, I definitely think there will be a group of parents who feel that way. Because I have received things that have gone as far as to say, I'm not sending my child back until there's a vaccine. So we do have to be prepared for that. And what a lot of the guidance has been for both students and there may be staff who medically do not feel comfortable coming back is that we would, at least for the staff, want to hear from a doctor, have a note, and then we will have to decide what we're going to do with students. We still want to provide an education for everybody. So we'll have to decide at that point what we're going to do. That'll be part of what we look at.
Okay.
Elaine?
Right?
Yeah, and I did get it this afternoon, and I tried to look at like the packet, and I'm sure I'm not just speaking for myself when I said I really haven't had an opportunity to really digest it, and I'm not, trying to imply that anyone else has either. But in reading the packet, it sounds to me as if phase 4 is 50 people to a group, and you can have multiple groups throughout the school. So classroom would be up to 50. And when it talks about social distancing, it says 6 feet if possible. So if you look at all of the language, it doesn't say there is a requirement that there must be, but it says to the best of your ability, if you can make it 6 feet, but if not, it's just, in as much as it's feasible, but it doesn't say it's required. Same with the busing. You can put that number of kids on a bus and it says try to social distance if possible. So there's no requirement that says it's going to have to be 10 kids to a classroom.
And I think you're reading that exactly right. I know my worry, and I've talked to many superintendents since we received this around 3:00, is that where's the liability going to lie with them saying you should practice it as best as you can, but you don't have to, even though like Illinois Department of Public Health is kind of saying you should. So that's something that we do feel that they'll work out with us in the next week or so, but we do want to hear those answers before we make any definitive plans. So. And that's the other part, Elaine, I think you said it very well. I've read through this now like 1.5 times, the first time really, really carefully, and the second time kind of skimming it again. And even then, you only get certain things that stick out when you're talking 60 pages. And over the next week, there's webinars that I'll be participating in. And like I said, I've already talked to a couple superintendents this evening. I have 3 calls set up tomorrow with local ones just to see kind of how they're interpreting it along with their district. And so as I get more and more information, I will definitely be passing that out. Elaine.
And so I guess my only other concern would be is if this task force is continuously going to be meeting and making these types of decisions or determinations, I just would be hopeful that people from all, sides of the spectrum will be involved in that task force, and not just people that are anti let's open the school are going to be the members that are going to be, making those decisions or having that type of vetting of the process or the feasibility of what can move forward. I'm hopeful, though, that the spectrum of constituents will be accurately represented in that task force.
Yeah, and I
That's
feel
a good thought.
Yeah, and I feel we have a very good spectrum of that. And when I asked the principals to choose parents, I said one of the number one things I want you to do is choose different grade levels. Like I don't want 6th, 4th grade parents. I want them kind of spread out throughout. And I said, to the best of your ability, if you know kind of the feelings, that if we could have one person who is all for coming right back to school and one person who is really, really nervous about that, I said to get those voices at the table is really important to do. So we're hopeful that we do have the good spectrum of it.
Do you feel the 2 board members, do you feel they represent the good sides of the spectrum?
I don't know. We would have to ask. I'm assuming that they would come with an open mind for our meeting.
I think that it's pretty clear that every educator would want children in the classroom to teach them. I do think, however, there are so many factors going into this. I can't speak from an elementary standpoint, but having small children, I think it's going to be very difficult to manage masks as well as lots of other things. I want to go into it with an open mind, because I have children who are in the district and I am an educator. I'm curious about the liability. What happens if a child comes in and is sick? Then what happens to everyone who was in the room? Do they all have to stay out for a certain amount of days? How does that impact our teachers at the school for sick days? So I just feel like there's a lot of different things. So I'm not saying like, hey, we should 100% be in the building, or hey, we should 100% not. I think that the way I'm coming into it is with an open mind. I want to hear what all the teachers have to say. I want to hear what parents have to say. And then I have my own thoughts and opinions as someone who's been a teacher for 17 years. You know, I worry about going back into the classroom, but I also know the emotional and mental impact and educational impact it's having on kids not being there.
Mhm.
I do think, though, it is a slippery slope to have people be able to have their cake and eat it too, meaning like some kids in the class, oh, but I can choose to stay home then too and do e-learning. I think that puts a tremendous amount of burden on the educator then as well. So, you know, I can't say that I'm like for anything. I'm trying to absorb everything. I did read the thing that came out. I read several articles kind of that were Cliff Notes versions of it, you know, but I mean, I want to represent what's best for the kids and for the school, if that answers your question.
I agree. And if I am completely going to try to be open-minded as well. There is a lot to read and digest. I did take a read through already this afternoon, but need to read it obviously more carefully before our meeting next week. I've done nothing but read about this throughout the entire summer.
I want to be on the task force.
Elaine,
Who are not
if we can have
and is there is a huge difference between. I think I've lost audio. But can you hear me or no?
You're back now, Tiff.
So the only thing I want to say is there's just a huge difference between reality and theory. And these theories are really good. But what I believe our duty is on the task force is to find the reality of it and to make whatever we come up with work. So that's why I want to be on it. I'm
pretty much a realist myself. I'm pretty much a realistic person.
Elaine, let me check to see if we can legally have more than 2 on there. I have to see if that then qualifies anything under the Open Meetings Act, but let me check for that. Okay.
Okay. And to be honest, some schools have already put out what they're doing. I have people who are in the Burr Ridge area that I'm friends with, and their school already put out what they're doing. So some schools are planning on doing a certain group of kids 2 hours in the morning and a certain group of kids 2 hours at night, you know, in the afternoon. Other schools are doing the, you know, like, oh, you go 2 days, you're off 2 days. So there's all different types of hybrids going on. I think it's going to be important as well to talk to the high school to see what they're doing. My concern for parents is if you have a kid and you have to pick them up at noon, if you're working a full day, how do you pick that kid up at noon and then get half-day sitter? I'm just trying to look at it from a realistic viewpoint, but you know, I think everyone agrees the best place is to be in the classroom. Is it the safest place is what I want to know.
And so before our next board meeting, we'll have had 3 more meetings, and you'll get a lot more emails from me with information. This is one thing I definitely don't want anyone to fall behind in what we're doing. So I will send everything I have, and please don't hesitate to ask any questions that you might have. Thank you. Next up is GoGuardian, and GoGuardian is filtering content for our district's Chromebooks. And Gino had brought this up to me really at the start of the school year and said, this is something I'd really like us to look into. And now that we have sent Chromebooks off of campus, and there's a good chance at times we might have to do that again, we do not have a filtering system on those computers when they leave here. So really any website any kid wanted to go on when they're on their home network, they were able to do that. And that's why we asked our parents to sign just an understanding waiver of that they should be monitoring what their kids are going on. But so we do find this really important to add on, not just for when it leaves the district, but even when we have it here. It does allow for a lot more monitoring of what the students have gone on. What I have made very clear to our administrative team throughout this process is the last thing I want to do is to walk by a classroom and see all of our students on a computer and the teacher behind her desk looking at a screen of what the kids are doing on their computers. And to me, as long as that doesn't happen, which I can't ever imagine it would, then I think this is something we really should move forward with. And you'll see in there the total on that's a little over $13,000 a year for the content filtering. And we've talked to a lot of districts who've used this and are very happy with it. The one add-on that Gino brought that I know our administrative team was interested in, it's called Beacon. And it's one where if the students are at home or in the classroom and are typing in specific search words, anything to do with self-harm, or if we wanted to put some other words in there, that it would alert someone so that we knew and could talk to those students or talk to their parents. That was something that would be an add-on if it's something that we are interested in. I definitely feel that we need to go with the GoGuardian content filtering right away. And the Beacon, I kind of leave that up to the board at this point. My hesitation is, when do you become that you're watching too much stuff? But at the same time, I would hate to ever find out a student was typing this type of stuff into our computers and something happened to them and we didn't know about it. So that's where we're at with it.
Does the GoGuardian also do keywords? That would be, you said content, but so are you saying somebody has to preload actual websites, or it would be based on keywords for topics that are inappropriate?
Yeah, so it would be both, but for the Beacon, even if they just typed it in and they couldn't get to it, we would see that they even typed it in, that they were like thinking about that at that point.
But that's not part of GoGuardian?
GoGuardian usually blocks the keywords, but my understanding of content filtering, it blocks the websites from you being able to go to, but you wouldn't see like in real time and get an alert that they put that in there.
Okay,
So
can I jump in?
Beacon, is Beacon an add-on to GoGuardian, or?
Yes, Beacon is an add-on for an extra $5,500 a year.
Okay, I just,
jump in?
I don't understand why it does.
Okay.
That doesn't make
I
sense
have
why
used
it has to have two separate parts.
I have used GoGuardian, but I used one of the like earliest versions when they first started doing for classrooms, getting the Chromebooks and stuff for classrooms. We used it at my school, and it worked very well. There was a few drawbacks, but this is how many versions later, because I'm talking like 7 years ago that we used it. So
can I ask
been
a
multiple
question?
versions since.
With the
It was
GoGuardian,
pretty decent to use.
Yeah, I'm really familiar with it. We use it at my work, and every teacher can use it in their individual period. So
Right.
when you go in a teacher's classroom, if you're switching, you can lock a student out of certain websites, or say you can only go on Google Drive and type. You can't do any internet searches. You can do stuff like that. Is GoGuardian transferable outside of the school? I do not
I think if
like.
they're on the website, yes. I think, am I right?
My
I mean,
understanding
is there a 24-hour watch on it? I wasn't aware of that, so I was just curious when I read that we were looking
my
into it.
understanding that on our devices that it would still be able to block that content outside of.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we had that back then too. But our kids didn't take it home, so it didn't matter. Does it have a locator on it?
That I'm not sure on. Is Gino still in the room with you?
No.
Okay.
I think he went to the bathroom.
And we are not voting on this tonight because they just got us the quote with not enough time to really go through everything, but it is something I want to bring forward to everyone, and I'll find out about the locator.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea if, I think they had that, if I'm not mistaken. But that was, like I said, I'm sure the versions have changed over the last how many years. We have, I think, when the first one's out.
And I would just want to make sure
liked it.
that the Go Guardian in itself is also sending alerts, not just the add-on. I mean, I think the add-on is fine if it's specific to self-harm and suicide, I
Mhm.
think is what you said. But I'm thinking more so with if it's that there has to be alerts to the keywords that are typed or certain keywords that are typed. There has to be an alert system.
The thing with Go Guardian is that it's managed by each teacher. So like when you're with an individual teacher, they get all the stuff. So how Adam was describing it, there are times where I'm looking at the Go Guardian if kids are typing or whatever, but it just shows like if they've been on certain, I don't know if it's specific as what you're thinking of, Tiffany. Like it'll show websites you went to, but it might not show what you looked at on that website. So it's almost like it looks like a timeline. It has each student's name. The only thing in real time is that you could see what the student is looking at that moment on their screen. But if you go back to look at it, it's almost like just a timeline, and it has little sections of what they've done. You might want to, you might look into having some, I don't know if there's a way to pilot it or teachers who want to test it first.
There used to be a way, we had a way where, like if kids were sending messages through like a back channel, and we were able to catch kids doing that. It wasn't good, believe me.
No, I just don't know, like to have this, like then who is going to be watching the Chromebooks? Is it the teacher for who your main teacher is? Is
Yeah.
it a period teacher if we're in the junior high? Is it IT? Like, are we having?
Well, the
is
teachers
Gino-
list them
Gino
by
watching-
periods.
Yeah.
You know, and different things can happen in different periods.
No, but it's like a book. Like it's like a video recording. If no one goes back and looks at it, then we don't know
That's
if
true.
they were doing something.
Adam, will this be also sent to the principals or vice principals, assistant principals?
Yeah, we can set
I
it
know
up.
I used to get it.
We can set it up however we want to that way.
Yeah, because I used to get it, and I would get alerts, and a little thing would go off, and it'd be, okay, right down the hall.
Tirza?
Okay, I guess, what's interesting is how I read it versus what Chrissy's giving
Mhm.
us is like night and day. What I got from what I read, and maybe I didn't read it enough in depth, was the whole fact that Guardian was going to be put on the Chromebook so the kids could not go to stuff that was inappropriate or anything like that.
That's true.
So they can't actually accidentally go to Debbie Does Dallas or on purpose do any of the crummy stuff of fifth grade kid thinks, what am I going to do? I did not realize that it could filter different ways and not allow them to go to other type of stuff. So I guess we need more information about exactly what they do. I thought Guardian was more of like a, block. No, you can't go to you got to allow them to YouTube. You can't go to, I don't know, something bad or things that are just like not educational. And I got the whole fact that Beacon
There's
was just
keywords too on top of that, on top of having specific sites, but a lot of it's done by keywords.
Yeah.
Too.
And Tirza, it does block that content. We can do that like let's say you did it at all of the junior high, you wanted to block these websites, or maybe you allowed it at the junior high, but maybe at the elementary schools they weren't ready for it. And then you can also pull it down to individual teachers as well. So
And you can adjust as you go too. If something's not working right or you want to add to it, you can easily.
I think that is
My
pretty
district
amazing, but more work for the teachers. I mean,
My district
But once
has
it gets
has
going-
nothing to do with the teachers. It goes to the central. It goes to the IT department, and
as
they
I
are
said,
notified with keywords, and then they kind of triage if the principals and the teachers need to be made aware that there was a situation.
We used it with the teachers, so.
Yeah, we
and
have
Done
both,
ways.
like Tiffany said. Teachers individually will use Go Guardian if they want to, but I feel like it's a server. Like the server is set up, they have certain things already blocked, like you can't go on Twitter, you can't go on video game stuff.
Right.
There's certain things that are automatically blocked.
So there's,
And my
certain things,
preference
and
would-
then also in addition to, you could put all sorts of keywords and everything, so sites and, and sometimes you get blocked out of stuff that you want, and so you have to let somebody know and they can unblock it. So I mean, but it does help. There's a lot of value to it in my.
But as I said earlier, the last thing I want is any of our teachers spending their time just looking at the computer.
Yeah, they don't need.
I need them spending
Yeah.
time with kids and teaching.
You can easily take a quick look, and know.
So I will, I'll get any more information from Gino that he has, and we hopefully can vote on that at the next meeting. The only other that I have is we did find out from the state this week that November 3rd, which is Election Day, now has to be a school holiday. We were originally off for that. We had a Teacher Institute schedule, and they just ruled that we are no longer allowed to have a Teacher Institute on that day. So we have to make a calendar change. And I did have a brief discussion with the union today. And to me, the best place to make a change that doesn't really upend too much is after our spring break. If you remember when we did the calendar, that Tuesday is another election day, but we are not required to be off for that one. But I still don't want to have students here. So instead of having us come back that Monday, we did give Monday and Tuesday after spring break off. And my recommendation is that we continue Monday, a day off for the students, and then Tuesday would be a Teacher Institute day. So the teachers would not have that day off, but the kids would continue to have that. I'll make up a mock calendar for you. And that's another thing that I would like to try to vote on in July so that we can hopefully get parents the accurate calendars in August. And hopefully we don't have to change it as much as we did this year. So. All right, that's everything I've got. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Yes, Kathy's turn.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Okay, just a couple of things. I wanted to talk about the two summer projects going on in the buildings. Not the most exciting, but perhaps the most important. We are in the midst of having our fire alarm replaced throughout the buildings. And earlier in the month of June, Corey and I actually had an in-person meeting with the contractor that's going to be V-Liner Services. They're a general contractor that is going to be doing the installation and reconfiguration of the fire alarm system. And in the pre-construction meeting, Corey did a great job. He goes over the expectations, the goals, the timelines, and as with any project, there's always a lead time for equipment. So the equipment has been ordered, and the substantial completion of that is slated for July 31st. And then the other project we're working on is securing the front entrances of the buildings. And on the same date, we met in the district office with both Tyco Johnson Controls, which is our security company right now, and LaForce. As you remember, those two companies are going to be doing a tag team to install additional buzzers and security options on the doors to keep our buildings secure. And Johnson Controls actually has been in the offices already, as they started yesterday. And they're going to do their preliminary work. LaForce isn't going to start until early July because they are the suppliers of some equipment. But along the same lines, we're looking at a July 31st completion date on that as well. And okay, another construction project I just really wanted to have a discussion about today. Back in November, Fran over at Ridge Lawn applied for and won an additional Enchanted Backpack grant. And we had talked about this way prior to COVID, and it was a $20,000 grant that she wrote specifically for acoustics in the gymnasium. She really wanted to target improving and touching on sensory issues, especially with some of our students that are a little bit more sensitive. That gym over there is huge. It's very loud. There's 2 classes going on at one time. So she really felt that she wanted to focus on that. And so with the help of Studio GC, we reached out to a couple of contractors to discuss options. And one option is to put wall panels throughout the gym. And the other is to do a spray foam. And even though the panels might be a little bit more budget friendly, in order to make a real significant impact, it would be much more than the $20,000. So what Corey did is he reached out to another vendor and looked into a spray foam. And the first quote we got was for both the ceiling and the walls, which again was, you know, probably at the tune of $50,000, much more than our $20,000.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, and so kind of going back and forth, the quote that's in your board packet is kind of a compromise. What that vendor quoted was for us to put the foam only on the walls, and they would extend 10, 12 feet. Now, obviously, that is going to be less effective than putting it on the ceiling as well, but it's a much simpler process where it's a little bit more cost efficient. And again, you know, talking with Corey, and that's why he's here today in case anybody has any real specific questions. The panels, we really felt like $20,000 really wouldn't get us very much reduction in noise level, as opposed to the spray alternative throughout the gym. So really just a discussion, because if we did do this, we would exceed the grant money by probably about $8,000 or so. So that would have to come out of the O&M budget. But in terms of reducing that noise level, we really think it would be worth its while.
I have two questions. One, what has been looked into in terms of the health of some sort of foam being adhered to the walls and just living in there where children are breathing, running, and sweating?
Mm-hmm.
And then my second question is, were other things looked into, like putting a partition, not just a curtain, but like a movable wall that could provide separating and some noise control, and looking into audio systems where teachers wear like a microphone system?
Corey, do you want to handle those specifics?
Yes, I can. So with regards to the foam, so the product that we are specified is called K13. It's not necessarily, it technically is, yes, a foam. It is a spray insulation. So it's good for both thermal and acoustic properties. A lot of time when people see this foam, it's the old stuff that is up on walls that flakes off a lot. This material is very, very, very hardy. So if basketballs hit it, baseballs hit it, whatever hits it, it does not flake off. There are no health issues. It does not, it is, what's it called? I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what word I'm looking for, but it does not have any mold issues or any environmental issues within this space. So it doesn't help the growth of any environmental impacts like that. We do have some reports as well. So the space as it currently is designed, and then the addition of this insulation does provide significant amounts of reverberation loss, as well as the actual decibel levels. So we have those reports that will before and after, and we have weighed those against using panels or some other devices that would provide less opportunities to help the acoustics in those spaces. With regards to providing separations or curtains for that, I believe there might be a curtain to separate the space now, if I'm not correct. You're muted, Adam.
There is currently a curtain now, but I believe we're asking more like a solid partition going across.
Like an automatic wall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I can kind of speak to if we do want to separate the two classes, for instance, with an automatic wall or something like that, we would be looking at costs up in the $100,000 range, or specifically with the height of the space, at least.
Can you repeat can you please repeat what you just said?
So if we were looking for like an automatic wall that would separate, or an operable partition that would separate two classes at the same time, approximately in the same location of the current curtain that is there currently, I would have to venture to guess approximately at least $100,000 to make that work.
So this spray material, is this rubberized, some type of dense rubberized
No,
material?
it's a foam, and I think there is a sample in the district somewhere of what it would be installed. It's that little 4x4 square, Kathy?
I do. I have it at my desk if anyone wants to see it.
I would think it wouldn't be porous if it's
No,
Not
it
gonna
is not porous.
mold.
It appears to be a solid, and you cannot compress it at all. And so it's one of those things that if you end up painting it, you do take away the acoustical properties, but it will be a white finish, and that white finish does not yellow. There's been several installations of this in the area, and that we have done personally for several of our districts. And from day one before and day one after its installation, you will physically be able to tell a difference.
What's the lifespan of it?
20 years.
What
And
about as
then
far as
what?
being
Do you have to
flame
remove-
retardant?
It is, I say, flame rated, so it does not have it is not a flammable material.
So in the event of a fire, it doesn't give off no caustic fumes?
That's correct.
And then I believe the question was, what happens after those 20 years, Corey?
It's warranted for 20 years, and then after that, it's still perfectly fine. It's just that's a standard building material.
If you have to remove it, how do you remove it at that point? Do you know?
It'd be the same if you want to go on the same material. It'd be same scrape and reapplication.
And during the school year, they actually did install a new sound system because Tiffany's question was, was there anything we could do for that? So they do a lot of, music things in there. So they have new speakers in there. But I think another concern is even though you could give that equipment to the teachers and their voices will project, when you have 20 or 40 little kids screaming, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything you could do.
Tirza?
I can attest to the whole fact, because I know most of us who are here are from Ridge Central versus Ridge Lawn, but I will attest to the fact that being on the PTA and stuff, we do the family reading night there. And it is not a hugely attended item thing, but I will tell you, we probably have about 6 or 8 mats that we have, and maybe there's 10 people in there. And I am telling you, it gets really loud when people are trying to be quiet and listen to somebody reading a book. So I can't imagine how it is when you have kids that are really, doing PE and hollering and everything like that. It definitely needs some type of acoustics for it to be more than a gymnasium, because they have that stage up there too. So it was designed, I wasn't here, none of us were, I don't think, to do obviously more than be a gym, but the acoustics in there make it almost impossible to be anything but a loud gym, if that makes sense.
And I think any gym acoustics are an issue that people deal with. The goal is to deaden that sound in the most cost-effective, safe way that we can do that. And I think we have settled on a way we think that's possible. But we wanted to make sure, especially because we are over the grant cost, we wanted to make sure we brought this to the board.
So I guess I just would like to encourage you to look at ways to enhance the teacher instructional voice as well, with microphones or the front row system, and having 2 separate feeds for both teachers to be able to use at the same time, so that perhaps as the 20 or 40 voices are lessened, their voices can be amplified.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sure does. Okay, and Corey, thank you for chiming in on those specifics. Okay, the last item I have is our contract renewal with Sunrise Southwest. And we started this conversation a couple board meetings ago when they gave us our renewal. And if you remember, at that time, they were asking for a renewal price going into FY21 for special education at 2%, but regular education at 15%. And historically, negotiations have been very friendly, very cordial, and very quickly. And they would give us an amount, we would counteroffer, we'd bring it to the board, and it would be a done deal. And unfortunately, it was not that smooth this year. It took several weeks, and what we settled on was an overall increase of 10% for both special ed and for regular education. Now, truth be told, the math is going to come out to be the same as their original proposal. The 2% for special ed and the 15% for regular really does come out to be a 10 and a 10. But we didn't gain anything by really trying to negotiate. Sunrise, they really kind of had us in a tight spot. When you go out for bid, you usually go out to bid in January. So even though our lawyer suggested maybe we could get an emergency grant, if you will, to go out for bid, we really didn't think it was in the best interest of the district. With what's going on, we don't even know if there's going to be enough buses, to transport our students. So in the additional clause 2, the additional renewal rather, there is an additional 10% clause in there that is what they consider to be standard language for cleansing and sanitizing the buses if need be. So overall, not very happy with those contract negotiations. But that being said, those of you that have been around here a lot longer than I and have been through different transportation companies, I know we are very happy with Southwest. And they certainly they certainly cited the reason for the increase. They talked about the insurance costs increasing, the salaries increasing, just the cost of business. So in their analysis, they truly felt that this was a fair price. They actually said they were losing money on their regular transportation rates. Obviously, we have no way of justifying that or proving it, but we will be asking the board to recommend that increase for the renewal for next year. Okay, then the other bit of information is way back when it started, Illinois State Board recommended that we continue making payments to our bus company during closure. And again, we had a discussion on this way back when, and it doesn't seem right. We're paying for services that are not rendered. But during negotiations, Sunrise came out and said they wanted us to pay about 80% of our normal monthly charges. And we did negotiate that down to 40%. Which is good, but in my mind, again, I struggle with services that are not rendered. Keep in mind, based on the reimbursement rate from the state, hopefully we would get close to 80% of that back. But that does mean that the state of Illinois has to come up with that money. So again, it will be another action item for us to approve those charges for about 2.5 months, which come out to be about $70,000 of our charges. Based on an 80% reimbursement rate, net cost to the district is somewhere around $14,000. Keep in mind, there's always the timing difference. That cash isn't going to come in until probably the end of middle or of FY21, but they really kind of negotiated both contracts at once. At one time, they even alluded to there might not even be buses to transport our students. So, any discussion on that? Any thoughts?
Well, it's still extortion.
All I will say is that obviously I'm not very happy with this either. But many districts in the area went ahead and paid the 80% to their bus companies. So even though I don't feel we were very successful in the 10%, I do feel at least with sticking to our guns with this, we did get it as low as we could. So, Blaine?
Does this set any type of precedent for this coming year if, assuming a worst case scenario, we are on some type of remote thing? Are we still going to, into perpetuity, continue to pay a contract just so that we can have a bus next year, depending on what happens with COVID or whatever the task force decides or whatever, the Illinois state government leadership decides? Are we kind of sort of now saying, okay, we did it before, so just continue to give us 40% of a contract until we decide to use the service again?
Good question. We are not legally obligated to do that, but I do think that a precedent has been set in the area, not just with this bus company. But at the same time, I don't know if Illinois would come out again and say we will reimburse for transportation the way we did. As we all know, the state was extremely generous in what they offered, both with making sure everyone got paid not only teaching, but for any stipends that they were receiving. So I don't know if they would moving forward. And keep in mind, although we were stuck in a tough situation at this time, if we're not happy with the service that we receive in the next few months, we do have that option of talking about going out to bid, let's say in January. My feeling is if they do provide good service and we're still seeing the same level that we've seen the last year and a half, 2 years, then we want to strongly consider sticking with them, just because from working in other districts and seeing, and I know some of you have dealt with even the same company previously when they were not providing good service, it's really difficult. Here's a
Okay, I have a question. Have they, with the negotiations and stuff like that, with what they were saying, that the amount of money that they're looking for, did they indicate what it was covering? Like, is it insurance? Is it the buses? Is it this? Because I get that they want us to pay 80%, but they have buses that are not moving. They have no gas. They have none of that going on. Plus, chances are Sunrise, I don't know what the way that they're made up, but you know what? Every single company out there that could applied for the PPP loan, okay? That PPP loan covers their
Employees.
their payroll. It was originally supposed to only be 8 weeks. Now they're extending it to 24. We're talking about these people were able to get like lots of money. People were getting over millions of dollars. The company that I worked for got a lot of money themselves. So I know that it doesn't give you a lot, but it seems like they're trying to say, well, we have costs. Well, the government is going to give them a loan. If they prove that they used it for payroll and only 60% of it has to be payroll, they can get the whole damn thing forgiven. It's free. Why should we pay for it? If it's being used for what it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, they probably aren't going to tell us that they got the PPP loan or whatever, but there's a special just automatic grant of $10,000. Anybody who applied for it got it. You cannot tell me if they're negotiating that they haven't taken advantage of the things that the government has going.
And they very well could have. I do know that they did furlough their bus drivers, because that was our big thing, was that I'm fine with helping that. But we do know that they did furlough their bus drivers.
There you go. That's why.
So they furloughed them without pay, correct, Adam?
I would assume so.
Right.
It means you don't get the benefit of the loan.
But on unemployment, honestly, those bus drivers were probably better off, excluding any medical benefits. They were probably making more money on unemployment than their regular salary.
We're making almost $1,000 a week, probably.
Yeah, that's $600 bonus. It's not even stopping until July 25th. So people are still making bank on unemployment.
Well, and just not to get us off topic, but that is one thing I'm nervous when one of the recommendations in today's document was that we should just hire more substitute teachers and custodians, and the longer that those incentives are out there for unemployment, the harder it's going to be for us to get those people to come on board. So,
Right.
They're right.
any other questions on the Sunrise contract?
And that's all I have.
Okay, no other or old business?
Nothing.
Okay. Then we don't, we could jump down to 8.1, am I right, Dr. Thorns?
Yes, so for our new business, and Corey, Kathy, do we have Corey on for anything else today? All right, Corey, thanks for joining us, but if you'd like to step off, you're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Okay, bye, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Which leaves Tammy patiently waiting. Thanks for joining us, Tammy. So Tammy wanted to touch base on 8.1 and 8.2. We are moving along in the bond process. Assuming everything gets approved today, we do have on Wednesday, Kathy and I and Tammy get to do a presentation for our bond rating, really, with S&P. So that'll be next Wednesday, and we've been preparing that presentation. And then really, by middle to end of this month, we could be going to the bond market. But I would just wanted Tammy to touch base on exactly what 8.1 and 8.2 are dealing with this evening.
Glad to. Thank you, everybody. So as Dr. Thorns mentioned, there are 2 items on your agenda tonight. And the first is approval of an underwriter for the bonds. So just to step back for a minute, an underwriter is the company that buys the school district's bonds and then ultimately sells them to investors. And they have a broad reach of investors that they will ultimately contact. And the goal, of course, is to get the lowest possible interest rate for the school district. So our usual process is to send a request for proposals to several firms, which we did in your case, and there's a memo that covered our process if you had a chance to look at that. And we received 4 proposals and evaluated them based on several criteria. And one of the criteria, of course, is the fees for each firm. So we want to make sure we understand what fees they will charge the district for selling your bonds. But we also look ultimately at each firm's ability to get that lowest possible interest rates. And there's different things that we look at, and we read their proposals very thoroughly because investors have different levels of relationships with underwriters, and the underwriters are really tasked with doing a lot of outreach. So we wanted to understand from the proposals just how much outreach did they do, what type of feedback did they get from investors, and ultimately where do we have the most confidence. And after going through those proposals, you probably saw in our recommendation that we recommend that the school district, the board, select Mesero Financial to serve as underwriter for your bond issue. And with that approval, then they will be engaged pretty quickly and we'll get them up to speed so that your bonds can be sold next month, like Dr. Thorne said. So I can pause for a second and see if there are any questions, if that's okay, Dr. Thorns, about the memo or anything in that recommendation. Great. I'll cover the resolution as well, and then I know you'll take the action on each of those 2 items. The second item is a parameters resolution, which I think we have talked about before. But this is the last legal step in the process for the district to sell the bonds. You've made it through all the other requirements under statute. This parameters resolution basically provides the authority for the Board of Education to now issue the working cash bonds. And it names several important parameters, just like it sounds, limits the amount of the bond issue to $5 million, which is the direction that you have given us previously. It also sets forth a maximum interest rate for each year of the bonds. And most importantly, it delegates authority to different individuals who will approve the sale of the bonds when we actually go into the market next month. And those delegates are named as the board president or vice president and the superintendent or business manager. One of the delegates has to be an officer, so that's why the first one's listed as the president or vice president, and then the second one is typically an administrator. The reason we do the one or the other and one or the other on the second one is just in case someone is out of town or ill or unavailable on the day of pricing, we want to make sure we've got some backup plans. But ultimately, when we sell the bonds, we have to have 2 delegates on the board's behalf that provide not only verbal approval of the bond sale, but also provide written approval that same afternoon. So that's really important that we get that approval. And ultimately, you know, these individuals will be very engaged with us as we get closer to pricing. And as Dr. Thorns mentioned, you know, we do intend to be in the market in a little less than a month. The beauty of this parameters resolution, which I think I've mentioned before, is it gives you flexibility in terms of the date. We have tentatively selected July 20th for the bond sale, but as we get closer to that date, if market conditions aren't very good for whatever reason, and I will tell you, by the way, the market conditions right now are very, very strong, stable, low rates, and we're certainly hopeful that that's going to continue to be the case until your bonds sell. But the beauty of the resolution is we can change the sale date if we feel like we should, because it would be in the district's best interest. So that's kind of in a nutshell of what the resolution's trying to achieve, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. It's exciting bathtub reading, I know, but
Well, as of right now, I am available. The date changes, that could change too, because I have a vacation not long after that. So,
I appreciate that. It's good to know.
So I'm good.
If there are no questions for Tammy, Nancy, if you'd like to do 8.1 then.
Okay, approve underwriter recommendation for Series 2020 bonds. Need a motion.
Can I just interrupt? Can we please specify that you're choosing Mesero if that is the underwriter that you're choosing, just for the record?
We're choosing who?
Mesero, just so that the motion is made to include the name Mesero.
Okay, the underwriter Mesero recommendation for the Series 2020 bonds. Right?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Okay, 8.2, resolution for providing for the issue not to exceed $5 million general obligation limited tax school bonds for the purpose of increasing the working fund of the district, 127.5, providing for the levy of the direct annual tax to pay for the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
I'll
second.
second it. Oh, that's fine.
I have Mrs. Callan on the second. Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
Tammy, thank you again for joining us this evening, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thanks much. Everyone be well. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on?
Yep.
Okay, 8.3, potential board action to approve payment to Beeline or Lean Services in the amount of $72,650 for services rendered for the installation of the new fire alarm system for all 3 schools. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
8.4, potential board action to approve contract renewal with Sunrise Southwest LLC for regular and special education for SY 2021. Need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Begrudgingly.
begrudgingly say I
Yes.
second it.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you, but
Start looking around.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
I will say aye in as much as we all acknowledge it's extortion, but aye with that caveat.
I agree.
Mrs.
We're all
Mrs.
there.
Salzer.
Aye. And definitely agree with Elaine. And Tears, I think, was saying that too. Okay, 8.6. Potential action to approve the consolidated state grant application for school year 2021.
I'm sorry.
Laura, did we miss
We
8.5?
missed 8.5,
Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry. No, I did
And
8.5.
what's that?
They're both
Oh,
summer.
there's the second one. I see it. I
Yeah,
see it. Potential board action to approve payment to Sunrise Southwest LLC for services during school closures. Another sore spot, but, okay. Motion. Guys, we need,
I'll make a motion, as long as they're using it for their people. Just kidding. Yeah, I'll make a
need a
motion.
second.
I'll second.
I know everybody's biting their tongue on this one.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
I abstain.
Oh,
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
I under protest.
hey, while we're on the subject of Sunrise, I have a request.
Yes.
When we, not if, but when we start looking around for another bus company, I think that one of the, a couple of the questions are going to be, what did the alternative company do for their people, or did they, did they ask for, what did they do during COVID?
Yep, we can do that.
Hey, can I jump in a little bit just for a second here? A lot of the companies all around us in this area are now owned by the same person. Sunrise is an exception, but there's a number of the other companies that have, they've formed a conglomerate.
And I don't want to, say this as if it's fact, but my understanding is pretty much everyone got screwed with their bus contracts, not just our district. It was kind of
Exactly.
like everybody got screwed with the same
Yeah.
type of.
We weren't alone. We weren't alone.
It's a monopoly, not a conglomerate.
Yeah. Sunrise isn't part of that, but some of the others around us. So it makes it hard for the school districts then. All of them, not just us. Okay, 8.6 now. I'm
Yes.
back again. Potential board action to approve consolidated state grant for application SY 2021.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Callan,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Is there any other, Dr. Thorns?
There is not.
We have no public participation. Nobody is here. I'm sitting in the boardroom and no one's here. And we need to adjourn.
Yes, I'll go ahead and read this. For the discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance of dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with the Open Meetings Act as defined in the Open Meetings Act 2C1. The discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as defined in section 2C2. We will not be discussing litigation, security issues, or any student discipline.
Okay. We need a motion to exit.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Mrs. Callen,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
That motion was carried at 7:40 PM.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Lori.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Laura.
All right, go ahead.
Let the record reflect that no other business was discussed other than what was contained on the agenda. Also, record reflect that at 7:48 PM, we reconvene to open session.
Right.
Now, we just have that one to vote on, am I right?
Yeah, we have the notice of resignation for Rami,
Oh, okay.
speech pathologist at Ridge Central. And then,
And then the salary for the hostesses.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, so we're looking for a motion to approve the starting salary for lunch hostesses and lunch hostesses substitutes to $10 per hour effective July 1st, 2020.
I'll make a
I'll make
motion.
I have Mrs. Lammle on the first and Mrs. Callen on the second. All right. Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Callen,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer. We just need a motion for adjournment then.
Did
Okay.
we, okay, never mind. Sorry, misread it. I'll make the motion adjourn.
I'll
I have
second.
Mr. Hillman and Mrs. Egan. Ms. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Callen,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport, and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. And German's at 7:50.